Well, my hair is messed up. I just got out of the pool. Flipping and wholesaling houses in New York. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses, or if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. So I got a question, and the question was more specifically, do lease options work better for a 2 to 4 family? And I want to talk about it in the general guide of creative financing. So I believe there are 4 main tools in the tool belt of creative financing. There is buying subject to, there are lease options, there is seller financing from the seller, and seller financing from you to a buyer. And I've discussed that I believe firmly that New York subject to does not work, and seller financing to the buyer doesn't work. But lease options do work, and seller financing from the seller can work fine. So just to explain, so let me go through those and just to explain what it means. Subject to means you're buying a property with the mortgage in place. It works, I believe, in 49 states. I don't think it can work effectively in New York State. Maybe upstate New York, far away, where sellers are not represented by an attorney, and maybe title companies are, don't know what's going on. The main reason I believe subject to is almost impossible in New York is because the sellers are almost always represented by an attorney who will never, ever agree to allow them to sell a property and keep a mortgage that is still on their credit and have someone else responsible for paying it. And more importantly, title companies here, which do not operate the same way title companies work in the rest of the country. Title companies here are simply service providers. They don't even move the money around like they do in every other state. They're just service providers, and their main goal is to make sure the main big liens are paid off. They are not going to understand how you are doing this. You can buy, I bought properties where small liens are, they left them subject to, super parking liens, stupid liens like that. But they were never going to let me leave the main lien. So subject to, very hard in New York. Second thing is lease options. Well, let's talk about what doesn't work in New York. Seller financing, where you're the bank to another party, is something you should never do in New York, because it can take 15 years to foreclose in New York. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. So you don't want to be the bank in New York. But the other two, where seller financing to you, where the seller is deciding to be the bank to you, that works fine in New York, and lease options do work in New York. So lease option means you're basically renting the property with an option to buy, and then you are either selling that option, assuming the number makes sense. You can sell that lease option, or sometimes called wholesaling lease options, or you can sandwich lease option, which means I'm renting the property with an option to buy, and then I find a tenant buyer who's going to lease the property from me with an option to buy. That can work. The reason why it very often doesn't work in New York is because the prices here are very high, which makes the debt service, the mortgage payments very high, and the taxes are very high. So I had a deal. I was really wanted to get this lease option going. I thought I had a perfect seller for it. I really did. I had a perfect seller. The problem was the taxes were so high, numbers so high, that I would have to get over $4,000 a month rent for that to be cash flow positive. And that's not what people were paying there, right? People were paying $3,000 a month. So can it work better for 2 to 4 families? The answer is yes, right? If you have more rent coming in, then it is easier to make the numbers work. A lot of these creative finance options don't work in New York for the same reason, right? Subject to doesn't work if the mortgage payment is so high that it's much higher than the rental that you can get for it, or again, it can work even in a situation where it doesn't. But subject to is going to be difficult in New York for those reasons I gave before. So because the price points are so high in New York and the taxes are so high in New York, it makes a lot of the monthly cash flow numbers completely screwed up, and it's very, very hard to make those work in New York. So yes, if you have multiple streams of rental income, that does make it easier, right? A 2-family, you can get $6,000 a month for a 2-family. You probably will not have that high of a mortgage payment, right? If you have a 3 or a 4-family, it's even better. So does it make it easier? Answer is absolutely yes, it makes it easier. It's still the numbers you have to run every time in this creative financing, and you have to understand that because the seller is probably going to be represented by an attorney in every single transaction, that the seller's attorney almost has to understand it. I'm doing a novation now, and I'm begging the attorney basically to talk to me before we start the transaction, so that the attorney understands how it's going to work. And if I was doing anything with creative finance where a seller was going to use an attorney, I would ask to speak to that attorney even before the transaction starts. What happens with these attorneys, and this is another pain in the ass of New York, is they don't want to talk to you. They only want to talk to your attorney. The problem is my attorney probably can't articulate what's going on here as well as I can. And my attorney understands how it's done, but I'm going to explain it in terms that I know the seller attorney wants to understand. So just for an example, when I do a novation, I have to tell the attorney, you're going to end up doing 2 contracts. You're going to do a contract to me, and then you're going to do another contract when I find a buyer for it. And they're going to take my place. I understand this is twice the work for you, and therefore, I will cover any additional legal expense. Also, you need to understand that my first contract is going to have no contingencies in it, and the next one is going to have tons of contingencies in it. It's going to probably have a mortgage contingency. It's probably going to ask for all kinds of things. But you need to understand that if that new buyer doesn't perform, I'm here and I'm going to perform, right? Which is something I have to do in New York. In other states, you can do an ovation, just jump out of the contract like everybody does. I can't do that. So I'm here, and I need that attorney to understand. And whatever contingencies or issues have to be taken care of, they falls on me. I need to explain that to the attorney first. I don't even want my attorney explaining it to the attorney. I want to explain it to him so the attorney understands that that's true, and he can put in whatever language he wants in the writer. I don't care. I'm fine with it. So that's an issue, right? So if I was doing anything creative and the seller insisted on being represented by an attorney, I would try to have a conversation with the seller's attorney so that the seller's attorney understands exactly what's going on and where he fits in. I had my first few novation deals die because I didn't preempt the seller's attorney with it, and the seller's attorney said, basically, why the hell would I do 2 times work? And they ended up either selling it to somebody else or listing it and I lost the deals. So that's upsetting. But so you need to be proactive on these deals and anything that's out of the ordinary. And I would highly recommend that you have an incredibly deep and broad understanding of what you're doing, so that you can explain it to the seller's attorney as clearly as I know I can. And if you don't, then I would say try to partner up with somebody like me who can clearly articulate what's going on here, so that the seller's attorney doesn't just say to his client, this doesn't smell right. And you've got to understand, the seller, even if he doesn't know the attorney, if he found the attorney on the internet, he's going to trust that attorney more than he's going to trust you. He's going to think you're as an investor, you're trying to screw them over. I had a deal once. I screwed up this deal, and I was going to buy it. It was a good price, and I was 99% going to close on it, but I decided I want the option to assign it. Maybe I could find a buyer for it and make a little money. And I pushed this very, what's the proper wording here? Let's say, I'm not going to say stupid. He wasn't a stupid guy. He just wasn't, let's say, unsophisticated seller on the fact that that I wanted it assignable. And he literally found the attorney like in the yellow pages or online. Attorney was terrible. The attorney told him, no, don't make it assignable. Jerk off attorney, right? And he sold to somebody for the same price I'd offered him. Actually, a good guy. He sold it to a friend of mine, Jeremiah Dolan, great guy, but only because I was hung up on that stupidity. But what my point is that sellers will always trust their attorney more than they will trust you. So even if they don't have a relationship with attorney, this guy knew this attorney for 5 minutes. So it's very important for you to get in front of the seller's attorney if anything that is going on is a little wonky, right? Any kind of creative finance, a novation, or anything that's not a typical transaction that a seller's attorney may not be familiar with. Because if a seller's attorney tells their client, I think something's wrong here, you're probably going to lose the deal. That's true. It happens probably 1 out of 100 times. It's not, I know people are always terrified of it. It doesn't happen a lot, but if it's something complicated, you need to get in front of the seller's attorney. So that's all I got for, we got way off the rails there, because really the question was, will lease option transactions work better with a 2 to 4 family? And the answer is yes. If there's a lot more rental income coming in, the numbers can work easier. So I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in all the ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you are interested in no. I think that's it for interested. Sorry. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching on any media channel, please click the thumbs up. The likes really help the algorithm. A lot more people have been seeing my videos, so thank you very much for everybody liking, everybody watching. And I post 5 times a week. I never really know what to talk about, so your questions give me topics to discuss. So keep the comments coming with questions. If it's a simple answer, I'll just reply with an answer. And you can ask a question about anything. It does not have to be at all about the video you're watching. So if it's a simple answer, I'll just reply with an answer. If it's something that I've covered recently, I'll send you a link to a video, or sometimes multiple videos on it. And if it's something I haven't covered in a long time, or something I've never covered, I don't think I've ever covered this question, I will be happy to do a brand new video on it. So I really appreciate everyone who's been liking, everyone who's been submitting questions, and everyone who has been watching. My numbers are increasing, and that is due to you. So thank you very, very much to everyone who's been watching and liking. Thank you very, very much.